everyone. I'm Mary Beth McAndrews from Dread Central. I am very excited to be here today with Darren Lynn Bousman, the director of many films you are familiar with, but most recently, The Cello. Hello, how are you?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm very excited to chat with you today about The Cello. And my first question for you is, how did you get involved in this project that is almost entirely written and in Arabic and takes place in the Middle East and in Saudi Arabia specifically? How did you get involved in this project?
It's crazy. It actually came to me from a horror icon by the name of Spooky Dan Walker. If anyone knows Spooky Dan, Spooky Dan, who is a friend of mine, has been a big champion of the rock operas and musicals that I've done. He
Yeah.
called me up one day and said, "Hey, I've got this crazy thing for you. Someone called me, wanted me to connect you with them. Would you go to Egypt and meet this person?" And I said, "What? I'm not going to go to Egypt. Are you insane?" And cut to 2 weeks later, I'm on a plane to Egypt to go meet with
What?
this strange, unknown, mysterious figure. Uh, and it was it was the beginning of a horror film. It really was. Like, I was given very little information. I was told I had to pack my bag in case they wanted to go into production right away, but they might just be sent back home. And I didn't know. I mean, it was so just weird. I was picked up from the airport off the plane by guys in suits, taken on an SUV, driven. I mean, it could not have. It was like the fever dream. And then I end up meeting with the writer Turkey El Sheikh, who was the coolest, most down to earth, fun, infectious energy. Like, you just felt like you're talking to Quentin Tarantino. He was like this dude that loved movies and loved horror. And I remember when I walked into his house in Egypt, he had kind of like your background. He had horror paraphernalia everywhere. And I saw like a little Billy doll from Saw, and I saw Annabelle, and I saw all of this stuff. And we literally spent that first night like 5 hours just talking horror movies. And then a few days later, after a few more meetings, he asked me to help him to basically take his book that he had written called The Cello and make it so it could be a movie that would work not only in the Arabic region, but in the States. So we went about for the next 2 weeks trying to kind of adapt his book that was all in Arabic into something. And at that time, we were going to shoot it. I believe the original intention, shooting it in Egypt. And then we started running into issues with filmmaking or to filming locations, getting permission to film there.
Oh,
And
okay.
so he said, "Listen, let's go to my country. I will make sure you can film anywhere you want." And that's where, next thing I knew, 24 hours, I'm on a plane to Saudi Arabia, which was not on my bingo card, which I was not expecting. And I think, like probably most Westerners, I knew very little about the country outside of what I'd seen on the news. And then I get there, and it could not have been more different than I think what my mind had conjured up. It was modern, it was beautiful, I mean, everything was new, and it felt like you were in the middle of a renaissance. The only way I can describe it is that for so many years they were under this very oppressive thing of no music, no art, no movie theaters. People had to be separated. If you went into restaurants, women weren't allowed to drive. And then over the course of like 5 years, they started opening up all of the things, and suddenly there are movie theaters on every block. There are Starbucks, there are coffee houses, there are concerts, there are. I mean, this morning it's crazy how quickly this is happening. I went on Deadline and I saw Johnny Depp is in Saudi Arabia right now. Baz Luhrmann's in Saudi Arabia right now. The movies that are being filmed there. So I think that in the course of the last few years, they've really made this effort to basically help and cultivate art and cinema and music. And it was insane. I was one of the first ones, Westerners, kind of in and allowed in to do this. And now
Oh, wow,
there's a
really?
backlog of people. Yeah, we were the first movie up in Saudi Arabia, and we were the first horror movie ever made in Saudi Arabia. But we were the
What?
first ones that were
Oh my God.
Westerners that basically came in and did a full film there. So it was just a very surreal experience.
Whoa. Wait, that's incredible. That's
Yeah.
wild. And I feel like that's so important right now too, though, especially with the state of the world and Islamophobia on the rise, to hear these from you and to have you championing a film that is in Arabic and that like
I'll
is
tell
about
you
Arabic
how,
characters.
I
Yeah.
mean, I guess I'll say, and this is the, I guess just my skewed culture, and I think what everyone's is in large part. I realized, there was one moment, and I was in a shopping center, and it was the second day that I was there, and I'll never forget this because I called my wife right after this happened. I was scared. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I was terrified going over there because you hear these stories, you hear these things.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember that I'm in this shopping mall. There is a bowling alley, and it's literally in the middle of the shopping mall. And so we're bowling, and on one side of us is what I guess I expected Saudi Arabia to be like. It was women that were wearing hijabs, full hijabs. The
Oh,
guys
the
wearing,
burqa, the whole, yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So, and then next to us was a group of young kids wearing completely Western clothes, everything Western. And then there was us, actual Westerners in the middle. There was music, rap music playing overhead, and there was an AMC movie theater right over there. But the moment that affected me was as I'm looking over at the people right next to us, this woman in a traditional hijab, um, is holding her kid, and the kid is watching Peppa Pig on an iPad. And I don't know how many times that I have had to give my daughter our iPad and Peppa Pig was on. And there was that immediate connection that we're all the same. We all want the same things. We want our kids to be happy. We want to provide for our family. And it was the first time that I realized, like, we're the same. And I think
Yeah.
that moment kind of defined the rest of our stay there, that it was great. It was just a very surreal, fantastic experience. And everyone on the crew, it was the first time this was happening. So there was a level of excitement. And a lot of times people are tired and worn out and over it because they've been, this is the seventh movie they've done this year. They're over it. They just want to go home. And it was the opposite this time around. So the whole experience could not have been just more fascinating for me.
That's awesome. So what was it like getting film crew, like with the film crewing? And did you bring all of your own crew or did you find
No,
local
we
talent?
it was a mishmash of both. So
Okay.
I brought over a few crew heads with me. I brought a producer, Lee Nelson, over who did my last couple of films. But we know the crew was made up of such a variety of different countries. There's a picture that we took on
Oh,
set of, I want to say it was like 60 different people, and they were all from different parts of the world. It was crazy. Um, the primarily a lot of the crew came from Lebanon, because there was not an
okay.
infrastructure in Saudi Arabia because they not film. There's not a bustling film market in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. Okay.
So they brought in people from Lebanon, some of them, and but everyone was kind of shadowed by someone local. So the idea is that we're teaching them how to do these jobs. So
Whoa. Okay. Okay.
it was that was a lot of it, but it was, we had people from Egypt, from Germany, from France, from Italy, from Africa, from Pakistan. I mean, it was insane, the crew. Um, and then the cast, which is another thing, which is the cast were from all over the Arab region. And so we had like the Tom Hanks of Syria. We had the Meryl
Yes,
Streep.
I don't think I realized who he was until I was like Google. I was like, oh my God, this guy's a huge deal. Like
Yeah,
people,
no, they all are. And
oh
it was crazy because, me coming in there, not, I think a lot of us are all very, we have blinders on. We see what's directly in front
yeah.
of us. I know Brad Pitt, I know whoever, but then you realize that the Arab film market is fucking gargantuan. And I didn't realize it
Yeah.
until, because the Arab film market, it reaches into so many different places. So we had the Turkey El Sheikh put together the who's who of the Arab world. And so here I am all of a sudden, like, not realizing the woman that I'm talking to is the equivalent of their Meryl Streep. And as I'm talking to her, there's photographers going off, and I'm like, oh, they're taking pictures of me. No, I'm a jackass. They're taking pictures of her because that's Meryl Streep. So yeah, it was pretty crazy.
That's that's incredible. But then you also have Jeremy Irons and Tobin Bell, of course. And I love that you have Tobin Bell in here, but also Jeremy Irons. Like, what was it like directing Jeremy Irons of all people? Like,
I kind of felt the
Understandable.
same way working with him as I did Samuel L. Jackson, is you don't really direct them because they're such a badass, and they've got Jeremy was the sweetest, coolest, and when I say cool, I mean fucking cool. He showed up, and my wife happened to be there the day that he showed up, and she leaned over to me as he walked in the room, and she said, "I would leave you in a second for him." He is so, like, there's such an air of confidence, and just he's just amazing. Um, so he could not have been any cooler. And he can, I mean, I could have literally handed him the phone book, and it would have been engaging. And I
It's
think he had
wild.
fun with it, because I think in a lot that his kind of monologues, that is him. He dresses like that. In fact, that might actually be Jeremy Irons' own clothes. Like that is, he's fucking awesome.
That's so cool. But then also, okay, so you said Samir Ismail is kind of like the Syrian
Yeah.
Tom Hanks. What was that like directing him specifically, also with the music sequences? Because it's always so interesting to me when actors have to act with instruments. So I was curious what that directing was like, and having him around instruments, and if he had any instrument experience, or if he was just making
So
it look good for camera.
he was one of the last people that were cast, and it was
Okay.
I almost didn't get him because there was such, I think, an inherent fear when he finally got on the phone with me that, number one, you're going to work with a Western filmmaker. Number two, you're going to be with a hugely popular Academy Award winning actor and doing scenes in English, which that's not his native language. Three,
Yeah.
you have to be an expert cellist, and you have 4 weeks to do it all in. So I think that there was this, he was scared. And
Yeah.
one of the first things that we said to him was, well, listen, we're going to send over a cello teacher to Syria. So we had two big issues. We had to get him a cello, and we had to get him a teacher. And he was in this very remote part of I think he was on another movie. But we got him a cello, and we got him a teacher. And for 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, all he did was work with the teacher and just learn the basics: how to hold a bow, how to hold a cello. Then when we got him into town, into Saudi, he had huge days, 8-hour days of just working with the teacher to look competent. That was our big thing. And in 1 month, you're not going to become an expert of anything. It was to
No.
look competent holding it.
Okay.
Then when we filmed it, the teacher would be right by camera. And sometimes the teacher was actually playing the cello, and then he would just watch the teacher and try to mimic the teacher doing it. We
Oh.
also filmed but did not use. Um, one of the thoughts that I had is, what if we had this great visual effect company attached in the Prague part, and we were like, what if we did an expert cellist with a green mask on? And we thought about that. Then I was like, you know what? I hate, there's some visual effects that I'm fine with, but I was not okay with that. When I started to see the
Okay.
restrictions that we would have to have in the angles, I was like, fuck it, Samir, you're doing it all. You're gonna do it all. We're gonna edit in a way it's gonna look awesome. So he did everything in it he did, and very happy with that.
That's so cool. I'm always so curious. That's awesome. Like that work and dedication that goes into those details
Yeah,
is magic of movie making, and the work that we'll all put into making the movies. That's amazing.
I
My
agree.
last question for you is, it's not related to the cello, but I want to know what the scariest movie you've ever seen is.
It changes. There's different
Okay.
kinds of there's different kinds
Yeah.
of scare. Like, there is movies that disgust me, movies that
Okay.
like are revolting that I can't get through, like those are the Cannibal Holocaust, those type of things.
Okay.
There are movies like a Serbian film, which I actually watched on Christmas morning with my father, and that's a whole other story, which we're not going to get
Okay.
into now.
One day
But
we will,
that,
though, because I have to
yeah,
hear that
that
story.
that movie was something that I, obviously had a hard time with. But to me, as I've gotten older, things affect me differently than they affected me 20 years ago. So
Yeah.
I think now what I would say is scary is someone without kids or a wife or dogs would not have the same definition of scary. So when I was in my
Yeah.
20s, I was living alone. Those are a certain type of movies. Now, as a father, anything that deals with kidnappings, anything that deals with kids in peril, kids in danger, families in danger, to me, I have a much harder time getting through than I do, watching organs being ripped out of somebody. The traditional answer to your question, though, is a movie that I have a movie that I go back to quite a bit as a movie that unnerved me, not scary, but unnerved me, was The House That Jack Built.
Uh-huh.
The
Okay. Yeah.
that that unnerved me. Just
Hmm.
the kind of, I guess, level of violence in it, and real violence, like killing people. I'm a
Yeah.
huge sucker for 70s religious horror. So not necessarily scary, but The Omen, The Exorcist, Rosemary's
Okay,
Baby.
The Omen, those are all still scary to me though, even though I'm not religious, and no matter how I saw them all when I was a
I watched it
teenager,
last
seeing them
night.
now. They're still
Last
The
night.
Omen is so
Yeah.
good. I love The Omen.
It is. And I think what makes The Omen different, and why I think The Shining in some respects, is you take Gregory Peck, a real actor, a great actor,
Yeah.
you put him in situations that if you would have put a no-name actor in there, it would have been a schlocky, 70s religious, whatever. But you put actors with gravitas in there, and suddenly the movie becomes something different. And so I think, to me, The Omen affects me because the caliber of talent. Um, Exorcist
Yeah.
3 really fucks me up. And I think, again, George C. Scott, it's you put an actor with the kind of gravitas in there, and things have more weight than they do normally. Um, but I would
Right.
say anything that deals with religious horror, because I'm not I'm not overly religious, but when you look at the America today, so much of our politics, so much of these right-wing, left-wing bullshit fights revolve around a religious idea, religious ideal, religious whatever. And so what people are willing to do, die, and kill for always terrifies me. Kevin Smith made that movie Red State, I think it was, about the church or whatever.
Yes. Yeah,
Things
yeah,
like
yeah.
that, because I think that religion has the power to unhinge people and the rational thought. So I think that anything that has to do with religion terrifies me.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. It was lovely to chat with you. I do have to say,
Yes.
your Saw 2 was the first movie to make me almost throw up when I was
Oh, that's
younger.
good.
So
That's good.
thank you so much for
Only in
imprinting that
horror,
upon my small brain as a
only
child.
in horror is that a compliment. Like, your movie made me
Right?
fucking sick. Well,
I
thank
know.
you.
I was like, you were the first movie that I had to walk out of the room. So thank you
Love
for
it.
that, for
I love it.
imprinting that upon me as a child. And now I
Uh,
am a horror journalist, which is very cool. Well, not
uh,
child, but now I'm a horror journalist. So
well, I appreciate that, and thank you very much.